Picture this. You're standing at a crossroads. Your mind is racing with pros and cons, spreadsheets of logic, opinions from everyone who loves you. You've analyzed this decision to death, and yet, somewhere deep inside, there's a whisper, a quiet knowing that doesn't match your calculations. Do you trust it, or do you override it with what makes sense on paper? Most of us have been taught that our conscious thinking mind is the driver. But what if I told you that the most profound guidance in your life comes from somewhere the ego can't touch? What if your job isn't to control your becoming, but to attune to something far wiser that's already guiding you? This video is for you if you're exhausted from trying to figure everything out. If you sense there's a deeper intelligence trying to find you and reach you, or if you're ready to learn the language of the psyche. Be sure to stay until the end where I'll share some practical ways to begin this attunement. Save the video for later. Be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to not miss my next episode. Hello, I'm Dr. RB. I'm a licensed psychologist in Florida, New York, and SciPact. If you're returning, welcome back. And if you're new here, I'm so glad you found your way. This channel is a sacred space where depth psychology meets ancient wisdom and where spirituality, human design, and therapeutic tools come together to guide personal transformation. My mission is to help you reconnect with your authentic self and divine guidance so that you can navigate this rapidly changing world with clarity, purpose, and peace. Let me share something with you that might be uncomfortable at first. The you that you think is running your life, the one making plans, setting goals, trying to control outcomes, even trying to manifest. That's not actually the deepest part of you. You call this the ego. And the ego is essential, don't misunderstand me. We need it to function in the world. But the ego has confused itself for the whole person. The ego is like the tip of an iceberg. It's what's visible, what's conscious of. But beneath the surface, under the water, there's a vast, mysterious intelligence of psyche. You'll call this deeper layer the unconscious. And within that unconscious dwells what he termed the self, with a capital S. So now here's where it gets interesting. Jung wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, and who looks inside awakes." What does that mean? When we only look outside, when we're constantly seeking validation, answers, and direction from external sources, we're essentially sleepwalking through our own lives. We're dreaming someone else's dream, living according to scripts we never wrote. But when we look inside, when we turn our attention to the vast interior landscape, that's when we wake up. That's when we discover there's an intelligence operating in us that's far more comprehensive than the ego's narrow perspective. So what is this self with a capital S? In Jungian terms, the self is the totality of the psyche, conscious and unconscious combined. It's the organizing principle, the center, the source of deep guidance. Some people experience it as an inner wisdom. Others feel it as a calling or a sense of rightness. In spiritual language, we might even call it God, the universe, life force, or divine guidance. What matters is this. The self is always communicating with us, always. The problem is that the ego is usually too loud, too busy, too defended to hear it. The ego wants control, it wants guarantees, it wants to know the 5-year plan with footnotes and contingency strategies. The self works through symbols, dreams, synchronicities, felt senses in the body, and those quiet knowings that don't have logical explanations. The self speaks the language of the soul, not of strategy. Jung wrote another line that's crucial here. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. What are my favorite lines? Think about it. All those times you said, I don't know why this keeps happening to me, or I can't explain why I made that choice. That's the unconscious running the show. It's not fate. It's unexamined interior material directing your life from the shadows. The work then is to make the unconscious conscious, to learn the language of the self, to become attuned to its cues. Because once you do, you stop feeling like life is happening to you and you start experiencing yourself as part of the unfolding process that has an intelligence within. Now you might be thinking, okay, if this guidance is always available, why don't we just naturally follow it? Good question. The answer is the ego is terrified of the unconscious. Think about it from the ego's perspective. The ego has spent years building walls, creating strategies, and maintaining control. It's convinced that if it lets go, everything will fall apart. The ego equates surrender with annihilation. And here's the paradox. The more the ego tries to control the situation, the more rigid and disconnected we become. We start living in our heads, cut off from the wisdom of the body and the soul. We make decisions based purely on fear or social conditioning rather than authentic inner knowing. The ego also resists because following the self requires us to face what Jung called the shadow. All the parts of ourselves that we've rejected, denied, and hidden. The self doesn't let us bypass our wounds and darkness. In fact, the path to the self often goes directly through the shadow. Jung understood that transformation isn't about transcending our humanity or becoming perfect. It's about integration. It's about accepting and making conscious all those parts we've kept in the dark. That's soul work. That's healing. And it's absolutely necessary if we want to access genuine inner guidance. So, how do we begin to attune to this non-ego guidance? How do we learn to hear the self through the noise of the ego? First, we have to cultivate what I call interior listening. This isn't meditation in the sense of emptying your mind, though it can be helpful. It's more about creating space and silence where you can actually hear the subtle communications coming up from the psyche. This might look like sitting with a question without immediately searching for an answer. This might also be paying attention to your dreams, writing them down, noticing what draws your attention, those synchronicities that make you pause. Tracking the sensations in your body because the body often knows before the mind catches up. Second, we need to develop a relationship with uncertainty. The ego wants clarity. The self often offers direction, one step at a time. It's like the hermit card in the tarot, where you have that old man carrying that little lamp and it's very foggy in the picture. You can't see much ahead of you. It's much like that. If you need the whole map before you move, you'll never follow your authentic path. Sometimes guidance looks like just taking the next step. You'll see the next one when you get there. Third, we have to practice discernment. Not every impulse is wisdom. Not every thought is guidance. Learning to distinguish between ego reactivity, trauma responses, and genuine inner knowing takes time and a lot of honesty. This is where working with a therapist or spiritual direction, or even a Jungian coach, can be invaluable. And here's something crucial. Attuning to the self doesn't mean becoming passive. It's not spiritual bypassing where you just let go and let God, while abdicating all responsibility. No. Attunement requires tremendous courage, presence, and willingness to act when the moment calls for it. When you begin this practice of interior listening, something shifts. You start to notice that life has a texture and an intelligence you were missing before. Doors open that you didn't even know existed. People show up at exactly the right time. Solutions emerge that your logical mind couldn't have manufactured. This isn't magic or wishful thinking or law of attraction. It's what happens when you align with the deeper currents of the psyche instead of fighting against them. Jung would say you're individuating, becoming who you actually are rather than who you think you should be. And here's the beautiful part. As you learn to trust this guidance, anxiety starts to diminish. Not because your life becomes easier or more predictable, but because you're no longer carrying the burden of having to control everything. You're learning to dance with life rather than wrestle into submission. You'll discover that you are held, that there is an intelligence moving through your life. That's your job, is it, after all? You'll discover that you are held, that there is an intelligence moving through your life, that your job isn't to have all the answers. It's to show up and pay attention and respond with courage when the moment asks something of you. Who looks out dreams, and who looks inside awakes. The question is, are you ready to wake up? Before we close today, I want to give you 3 practical ways to begin this attunement right now. 1. Start a simple practice of asking and listening. Before bed, pose a question to your unconscious, not demanding an answer, but genuinely asking. Then pay attention to your dreams, to what captures your attention the next day, to the quiet thoughts that arise. 2. Track your body's wisdom. When you're facing a decision, notice how your body responds to different options. Does your chest expand or contract? Do you feel energized or drained? The body often knows before the thinking mind does. 3. Create space for unknowing. Instead of rushing to figure everything out, practice saying, I don't know yet, and that's okay. Give the self room to reveal what needs to be revealed in its own timing. Remember, this is a practice, not a destination. Some days you'll feel deeply connected, other days the ego will be loud and insistent. Both are part of the journey. The work is to keep returning, keep listening, keep trusting that something greater is indeed guiding your becoming. If today's message resonated, I invite you to subscribe, like, or share. It helps this work reach those that need it the most. You can also find me on Substack and other sites, which I'll have down below. You can also find me on and other social media sites, which I'll have down below, for deeper dives and personal reflections. Thank you for spending this time with me. I know your time is extremely valuable. Remember, you are guided, you are loved, and your path is sacred. Remember, you are guided, you are loved, and your path is sacred. Until next time, take good care of your soul.